What happens when Hollywood's most unpredictable actor meets late-night television's most passive-aggressive host? You're about to witness one of the most uncomfortable interviews in talk show history, where a routine promotion spiraled into a complete disaster that left audiences stunned and one A-list celebrity walking off set. Make sure you subscribe and drop a comment below, because this story is absolutely wild. Mark Wahlberg walked onto the Jimmy Kimmel live set that evening with his usual confident swagger, waving to the audience before settling into the guest chair. The crowd was electric, cheering for the Boston native who had just wrapped filming on his latest action thriller. Jimmy Kimmel, sitting behind his desk with that trademark smirk, seemed ready for what should have been a straightforward promotional interview. "Mark Wahlberg, everybody," Jimmy announced as the applause faded. "Thanks for being here, Mark. I know you're busy saving the world in movies and probably in real life too, knowing you." Mark chuckled and shifted in his chair. "Thanks for having me, Jimmy. Always good to be here in Hollywood, even if it's not my favorite place in the world." "Oh, right, because you're all about that Boston life now," Jimmy replied, his tone carrying a faint edge. "Tell me, do you miss the good old days when you could just walk around Boston without people recognizing you? Back when you were just what was it? Marky Mark." The audience laughed, but Mark's expression changed slightly. His smile stayed, but his eyes narrowed a bit. "Those were different times, Jimmy. I was young. Made some mistakes. Learned from them. That's what growing up is about." Sure. Jimmy leaned back in his chair, settling in. "But you know what I find interesting? You've really reinvented yourself, haven't you? From the underwear modeling to the music career, and now you're this serious actor and producer. It's quite the transformation. People change, Jimmy. People evolve. I've been fortunate enough to have opportunities to grow in this business." Jimmy's smile widened, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Right, evolve. That's one way to put it. I mean, some people might say you've just gotten really good at managing your image. You know, controlling the narrative." Mark leaned forward slightly, his Boston accent sharpening. "What exactly are you getting at here, Jimmy?" "Oh, nothing. Jimmy waved it off, though his grin said otherwise. "I just think it's fascinating how Hollywood works. How someone can completely reinvent themselves and everyone just goes along with it, like collective amnesia or something." The audience began sensing the tension. The usual playful back and forth had taken on a sharpness that made people shift in their seats. Mark's jaw tightened as he leaned back, studying Jimmy with the intensity he usually saved for his dramatic roles. "You know what, Jimmy? If you've got something to say, just say it. Don't dance around it with all this passive-aggressive nonsense." Jimmy raised his eyebrows in mock surprise. "Passive-aggressive? Me, Mark? I'm just making conversation. This is what we do on talk shows. We talk." "Yeah, well, there's talking, and then there's whatever this is supposed to be," Mark replied, his voice level but warning. "You invited me here to talk about my new movie. So let's talk about the movie." Of course the movie," Jimmy said, picking up a card and barely glancing at it before setting it down again. "But you know what's really interesting? Your whole journey from the streets of Boston to Hollywood elite. I mean, that's quite the leap, isn't it?" "Jimmy, what the hell is wrong with you tonight?" Mark asked. His irritation was now unmistakable. "You're acting like we've got some kind of problem." "No problem at all, Mark," Jimmy insisted. "I'm just curious about the real Mark Wahlberg. Beneath all the Hollywood polish. The guy who really knows how to handle himself when things get tough." "Handle myself?" Mark's voice dropped into the tone fans recognized from his explosive movie scenes. "What exactly do you think you know about how I handle myself?" "Well, I mean, you've got quite the reputation, don't you? For being, let's say, direct in your approach to problems." The tension in the studio was thick. Mark stood from his chair, and Jimmy's confidence finally wavered. "You know what, Jimmy? I came here as a professional to talk about my work, to promote a movie that a lot of people worked really hard on. But if you want to sit there and take shots at me for some reason I can't figure out, then we've got a problem. Mark, sit down, Jimmy tried. Let's just reset. Maybe we're having a miscommunication. Miscommunication? Mark laughed humorlessly. Jimmy, I've been doing interviews for 25 years. I know the difference between miscommunication and someone trying to get under my skin for their own entertainment. Jimmy attempted to steer things back. Okay. Let's talk about the movie. Your new film, what's it called again? Don't, Mark said quietly but forcefully. Don't pretend like you don't know what you're doing here. Jimmy shifted, losing his confidence as the lights exposed the sweat forming on his forehead. But instead of backing down, he made the mistake that would turn the interview into television infamy. Look, Mark, I think you're being a little sensitive here. Jimmy forced a laugh. I mean, come on, we're all adults. Can't we have a real conversation without you getting all, street about it? The word hit the air like a weapon. Mark's face went still. The studio fell silent. Street? Mark repeated slowly, his accent cutting sharp. Did you just say I was getting street about it? Jimmy immediately knew he'd crossed a line, but pride and live TV pressure pushed him forward. I just meant you're getting a little intense over what's supposed to be a fun interview. Fun? Mark stepped closer to the desk. Jimmy instinctively leaned back. You think this is fun? You think sitting here while you take cheap shots at me and my background is fun? Mark, please sit down, Jimmy pleaded, his voice cracking. Let's just move on to the movie. No. Mark pointed at him. You don't get to do that. You don't get to poke and prod and make your little comments and then try to move on like nothing happened when you realize you pushed too far. The audience was silent, some visibly nervous. This was no longer comedy. Jimmy tried to regain control. Mark, I understand you're upset, but we're on television. Maybe we should take a commercial break and, we're on television? Mark cut in, his voice rising. Oh, so now, you're worried about being on television. You weren't worried about that when you were trying to embarrass me. I wasn't trying to embarrass you, Jimmy said weakly. Really? Then what would you call it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you brought me here to be your entertainment. Like I'm some dancing monkey who's supposed to take whatever garbage you throw. Jimmy's face reddened as his temper finally surfaced. Look, Mark, I've had hundreds of guests on this show, and no one has reacted like this to simple interview questions. Simple interview questions? Mark laughed bitterly. Jimmy, you've been taking shots at me since I sat down. You questioned my authenticity, mocked my background, and then called me street when I called you out. I was just doing my job, Jimmy snapped. This is a comedy show. Everything isn't a personal attack. Your job? Mark's voice dropped again. Your job is to make your guests feel comfortable so they want to come back. Your job is to entertain your audience, not use your guests as punching bags for your insecurities. Jimmy stood up, matching Mark's energy. My insecurities? You're the one who can't handle a few jokes without threatening people. Threatening people? Mark stepped closer as security moved in. Jimmy, if I was threatening you, you'd know it. I'm telling you you're being disrespectful, and I don't appreciate it. I'm disrespectful? Jimmy shot back, his voice cracking. You come on my show, sit in my chair, and tell me how to do my job? That's disrespectful. Mark stared at him, breathing hard. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but final. You know what, Jimmy? You're right. This is your show. Your chairs. Your studio. Mark started walking away. Which means I don't have to sit here and listen to this. Where are you going? Jimmy called, panic rising. I'm leaving, Mark said. Because unlike some people, I know when I'm not wanted. Jimmy, desperate to salvage the moment, made one last mistake. Oh, that's perfect, Mark. Just walk away. That's exactly what everyone expects from you, isn't it? When things get tough, you just walk away. Mark stopped, slowly turned. The audience gasped. What did you just say to me? I didn't mean anything by it. Jimmy tried. I just meant you're leaving in the middle of an interview. No, Mark said, walking back toward him. You said that's what everyone expects from me. What exactly do you mean, Jimmy? What makes you think you know me well enough to say something like that? The studio was so quiet that Mark's footsteps echoed like gunshots. Jimmy gripped the edge of his desk, knuckles white with tension. Mark, please, let's just calm down and finish the interview like professionals. Professionals? Mark was now standing directly in front of Jimmy's desk, close enough that the host had to look up to meet his eyes. A professional doesn't ambush their guests. A professional doesn't use their platform to settle personal scores or boost their own ego. Personal scores? Mark, I don't even know you well enough to have personal scores with you. Then what is this about? Mark demanded. Because this sure as hell isn't about promoting my movie or entertaining your audience. Jimmy's face went pale as Mark stared him down, waiting for an answer everyone in the studio knew was coming. The host's hands trembled slightly as he gripped his desk. Finally, his voice barely above a whisper, he said, "You really want to know what this is about?" "Yeah, Jimmy. I really want to know," Mark replied, his voice steady and dangerous. "I came here to help your ratings, to promote my movie on your show. And instead, you've spent the last 10 minutes trying to humiliate me. So enlighten me." Jimmy stood slowly, his chair rolling back. There was something raw and bitter in his eyes that the audience had never seen before. "You want to know? Fine. It's because guys like you make me sick," he said, voice gaining strength. "You come from nowhere, screw up half your life, and Hollywood hands you everything. Meanwhile, people like me grind it out for decades, and we're expected to be grateful just to be here." Mark's eyebrows rose in genuine surprise. "Are you kidding me right now? This is about jealousy." "It's not jealousy," Jimmy snapped, pointing at Mark. "It's about fairness. You can assault people on the street, get arrested, and Hollywood still rolls out the red carpet. If someone like me makes one wrong joke, one mistake, my career's over." The audience fell silent. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was a live psychological confrontation. "Jimmy, first of all, I never assaulted anyone. Second, you think my success was handed to me? You think I didn't work for everything I got?" "Oh, please," Jimmy laughed bitterly. "You made a couple of tough guy movies, and suddenly you're a serious actor. You're a novelty act, Mark. A curiosity." The words hit like a physical blow. The audience gasped. Even camera operators shifted uncomfortably. Mark stood still, absorbing the insult. "A novelty act," Mark repeated slowly. "That's what you think I am." "That's right." Jimmy pressed on. "You're famous for being from Boston. Getting lucky. Real entertainers claw for every opportunity." Mark nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe you're right about some things. Maybe I had lucky breaks. But you're completely wrong about one thing." "What's that?" Jimmy asked, sarcasm dripping. "You said one mistake ruins a career," Mark continued. "Yet you're making a huge mistake right now on live television. And somehow it won't hurt you. You'll spin this, go on other shows, and make it look like I overreacted. And people will believe you because it fits the narrative better than admitting you used your platform to tear down a guest." Jimmy's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "That's not, you wouldn't," Mark interrupted. "Tell the truth. You've been lying to your audience for 15 minutes. You brought me here to take shots at me and feel better about yourself. I brought you here for an interview." Jimmy protested. "No, Jimmy. This isn't an interview. An interview is asking questions to learn about your guest or help promote a project. This is a hit job. You're using your power to make me look bad because you're insecure about your own success." Jimmy's face flushed red. "Insecure? I have my own show, millions of viewers every night. I'm not insecure." "Really? Then why are you angry about my success? Why does it bother you so much that Hollywood gave me opportunities? If you're so secure, why care what happens to me?" The question hung in the air. Jimmy looked around for support, finding only uncomfortable faces. "Because it's not fair," he said quietly. "It's not fair that guys like you skip the line while guys like me wait our turn." Mark stared for a long moment. "Jimmy, there is no line. There is no fair. People work as hard as they can and hope for the best. If you spend half as much energy on your craft as you do resenting others, maybe you wouldn't be sitting here at 2 a.m. attacking your guests out of bitterness." "My life?" Jimmy's voice cracked with rage. "Don't psychoanalyze me. You don't know my life." "Right. I don't," Mark agreed. "But I know what I see. A man so unhappy, he can't stand seeing others succeed. Someone more interested in tearing people down than building anything up. Honestly, Jimmy, that's sad." Jimmy slammed his hand on the desk. "Don't feel sorry for me. I don't need your pity or amateur psychology." "I'm not giving pity," Mark said, stepping back. "I'm giving advice. Figure out what's really bothering you. It's not me. I just happened to be in your guest chair when you had your breakdown." The studio fell silent. Jimmy stood, breathing heavily, while Mark remained calm. Finally, Jimmy glanced around, seeing the panic on the crew's faces. "Maybe we should take a commercial break," Jimmy said shakily. "No," Mark said firmly. "We're done. This interview is over." He walked toward the exit. "Mark, wait. Let's end this on a better note," Jimmy called out. Mark turned one final time. "You want a better note? Treat your guests with respect. Don't use them for your issues. If you can't do that, maybe you shouldn't host a talk show." "You can't just walk out," Jimmy pleaded. "Watch me," Mark said simply. And with that, Mark Wahlberg left the Jimmy Kimmel live set, leaving behind one of the most explosive and uncomfortable interviews in late-night history. Jimmy stood alone, facing an audience unsure whether to applaud, boo, or remain silent. The cameras rolled, capturing his mortified expression as he realized what had just happened to his career, show, and reputation, all in the span of one disastrous interview. If you enjoyed this story of one of Hollywood's most shocking moments, hit subscribe and comment below. What do you think Jimmy Kimmel was really thinking when Mark walked off? Live television is unpredictable, and this proved it.